guys all so much for coming, and thank you to Ryan and the foam team for having us out here. Now let's hope my friends don't send me any embarrassing Telegram messages while I'm doing this. I'm just gonna go quit there. You never know. Cool. So my name is Ashleigh Schap. I work at MakerDAO. Hey, Susanna. Also, hey everyone. MakerDAO is a decentralized lending platform and stablecoin. How many of you have heard of MakerDAO? Okay, cool, nice. So I won't go into the full explanation. Then I'll kind of touch on some interesting points. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have a CDP? Nice. Anyone been liquidated yet? Yeah. Okay, I see you, Rich. Same. That was awkward. Yeah. So MakerDAO, decentralized lending protocol and a stablecoin. Obviously, stablecoins have been pretty hot this year. So, you know, it's been a little bit, I've got a lot of questions from reporters or from people at conferences and what have you, like, what is the big deal with stablecoins? Why do they matter? And, you know, the short answer to that is they're money. And that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because that's what, you know, the Satoshi's vision was, and his white paper was, this is money. We're supposed to use this to send each other value, right? Buy each other rounds of beers, whatever it is. But with the volatile nature of Ethereum and Bitcoin, that's kind of not possible. I don't really want to send my friend $100 worth of Ethereum when it's worth $120, and then it goes up to, here's hoping, you know, $400 3 months from now. We'll see. But basically what the founders of Maker set out to do was to create a stable unit of value backed by assets that can all be verified on-chain. So a trustless, borderless global money, which is a really new idea. The way that they've done it is really interesting, and I would love to go into every little facet. If anyone ever wants to talk about this, just call me. It's my favorite thing to discuss. But basically what we're doing is we're saying you can lock up some value of tokens, $100 worth of Ethereum, let's say, and you can borrow DAI against it. And when you're doing that, what you're doing is actually creating money. But that money is backed by more than $1 of collateral at any given point. You can then go spend that anywhere, and when you return that DAI, you can actually basically retrieve your collateral. So it's kind of like a pawn shop, a little bit. A smart contract version of a pawn shop. So what I'm going to show you today is just, and I'm going to put this away because I think I have this one. I'm going to just show you a demo of a CDP, which is really, really simple and easy. People, well, it is now. UX is an issue in crypto, as we know. And this is a nice new UX that we have. It's beautiful, but it wasn't always this way. So please appreciate how quickly this goes. It's amazing. Did anyone use the old DAI dashboard? Yeah, it was a total bitch. It took forever. I'm pretty crypto woke. I've been doing this since, 2013, and it still took me like an hour and a half to figure it out. So this is a huge improvement. So what you've got here is you've got how much ETH would you like to collateralize? How much I have, okay, let's say I have 5 ETH in here. And how much DAI would I like to generate? You can see below here, and maybe I'll just, can you guys see this okay? Maybe I'll just like zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. There we go. So max available to generate 402 DAI. So the way that it all works, it's based off of collateralization ratios. So for Ethereum, the collateralization ratio requirement is 150%. So we don't want to get too close to this max number, because then if the price of Ethereum goes down $1, which as we know it is wont to do, then you actually get liquidated. There's a lot of penalties. It's very painful. I wouldn't recommend it. So let's generate 100 DAI. So here we go. Now we have our liquidation price. That means that if our CDP is safe, our loan is in the money. Our banker, i.e. this set of smart contracts, is happy with us. They're not charging us any extra fees. They are confident in our ability to repay this up until the point where we've reached this number, 30. Here you've always got current price information, liquidation penalty, which can change depending on, right now we're in single collateral DAI, which is Ethereum only, but in a few months we'll be launching multi-collateral. So the liquidation penalty will likely be different across various asset classes. If I borrow $100 worth of DAI against 5 Ether, my collateralization ratio is 604%. And of course, you got the minimum ratio and the stability fee. Stability fees are like interest rates. So when I go ahead and, I'm gonna go ahead and create this so that we have a few minutes to chat while we wait for Ethereum to do its thing. So basically the stability fee is it's an interest rate, but a little bit different to a bank interest rate because it can be very modular. So bank interest rates are set by a bank based on sort of tranches of credit, credit worthiness. So if you're a middle income family between the ages of 30 and 40, whether you make $150,000 a year as household income or $170,000 a year as household income, you're going to pay the same mortgage rate, more or less. You're going to pay 3.5% to 5.5% depending on where you live in the US. Maker is really interesting because it actually allows you to be very specific about risk parameters across a multitude of different asset classes. Obviously, we're in single collateral DAI, so we're just doing Ether right now. You can think of where we are at this moment as beta. Sorry if my screensaver comes up, it's toasters. But basically, what's really powerful about that is that you can actually give people the interest rate that corresponds to the actual risk that you're taking on. And not just people, corporations, businesses, other smart contracts even, you can imagine in the future, AIs that are managing a portfolio of assets. There's a lot of really interesting things that you can do with that. Oh, here we go. We have a new CDP. Congratulations. So here we go. Now we can check our current CDP. CDP stands for collateralized debt position, by the way. Deposit or withdraw collateral, and generate or pay back DAI. Got it? Thank you. Where's the exit button? All right. Oh dear. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so you can see that I have generated 100 DAI, which has been added to my balance. Sorry, I meant to zero out this account before, but I forgot. But 100 DAI has been added to my balance, so I can always go back. I can pay back. I also have up to 300 more DAI that I can generate if I'm feeling risky or if I need to buy a new pair of shoes. And I can also withdraw Ether. So this is what's kind of interesting is you'll see users of CDPs doing different kinds of things. We have this one CDP called CDP 3228. Anyone heard of this guy? He's an absolute legend. I mean, whoa, he needs to go to one of those like gambling addicts programs, I think. But he had a CDP for, I think, 7 million DAI outstanding at one point, and then he got liquidated. There's a huge fee. That's a lot of scratch we're talking about. But then he just came right back in, and he would do this thing where he would, the price of Ether would go up a little bit, and he would take out a little bit more DAI, and then go buy some more Ether and put it back into his CDP, and just slowly did that until it got back to a ratio level that was, safe in our CDP system, which was really interesting. So there are a lot of things you can do here. People typically take out DAI to go and buy other crypto assets. We've had people that want to use it to self-finance their own mortgage. They've got a bunch of Ether. They don't want to sell it at these prices. So instead of taking out a loan from the bank against the equity in their house, they will just go ahead and take out a loan at 1% interest rate against the value of their Ether, which is a really interesting use case. They're the toasters that I mentioned. Sorry. If anyone is into vintage screensavers, hit me up. I got tons. So that's kind of a CDP. Now let's go ahead and pay it back. So we'll set it max. And we can pick to pay the stability fee with MKR or with DAI. The stability fee, again, remember, is the interest rate. And we're going to pay it back. Confirm. So now what I've just done is I have paid back the 100 DAI that I owe, plus the stability fee that is accrued every block. That's kind of one of the interesting things about this. I don't know, maybe it's not that interesting to you, but it's pretty interesting is that actually time doesn't really exist in smart contracts. So things have to be accrued every single block, which is poses an interesting challenge, I think, for our smart contract developers. But they finally figured it out. They spent quite a lot of time on that one. And whenever you are paying this back in the form of MKR or DAI, you can pay it back in MKR or DAI. But if you pay it back in either, if you pay it back in DAI, let's say, it's then used to purchase MKR on the open market, which is then burned. So what that means is that if the system is running well and people trust it and DAI is secure and safe and behaving as a stable unit of value for everyone to use, people are going to be incentivized to open additional CDPs, et cetera. More interest fees will accrue, and ultimately the overall supply of Maker is intended to go down, thereby rewarding the MKR token holders, basically by, how do I say this? Do any of you work for the SEC? No, okay. You're basically rewarding the MKR token holders for providing a service, which is risk adjusting the system and making sure that everyone's money is safe. No small task, to be sure. So while we're waiting for Ethereum, does anyone have any questions? Shoot.
Do you see the stability fee changing every quarter? Is it just, it could be 3% in a month? Like how will the stability fee vary, right? Because that's gonna create a domino effect if it goes up or down.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. It's something that we think about a lot. Ultimately, the team at Maker isn't in charge of setting the stability fee. It's all of the MKR token holders. And really, the stability fee is just a tool in our toolbox for managing a money supply. And as you just saw, I just created money out of thin air, which is pretty cool. But that money supply needs a monetary policy. It needs interest rates. It needs bonds of a sort. It needs just supply and demand functionality. So the ability to change the stability fee is one of the ways that you can constrict the supply of DAI or increase the supply of DAI. There are a few other methods that we have of doing that, but it's never going to be arbitrary. Well, that's not true. You could imagine a world in which a bunch of MKR holders collude and decide we're going to raise the interest rate to 20% overnight, but then nobody would create CDPs, and then DAI liquidity would dry right up, and if DAI liquidity dried right up, then the peg would break, and it would be really bad for them. They would lose all the money that they've invested in MKR. So MKR holders have a vested interest in ensuring that there is an equilibrium between what the market wants and what the rates are set at. Does that answer your question? Cool. Shoot.
Like the amount of ETH locked in DeFi and locked in Maker in particular.
Yeah, that graph is all over Twitter, but I don't actually have a copy of it saved. But
I think if you just Google ETH locked in DeFi, that one will come up. 'Cause that's like my favorite graph to watch.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, that's the one. And then if you click the Maker button down the bottom, everything gets shrunk.
So this is ETH locked in DeFi, and this is, So, it's mostly us. It's actually been pretty amazing because Maker sort of, as you can see, this is very small down here, right? This was kind of when it just started, but Maker's been at this for 5 years. We're one of the oldest projects in the space. So, now we're getting all this hype and everybody's talking about us on Twitter and everybody feels cool, but this was really, really hard. And it's still hard. A DAO with a on-chain governance system, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really sure that you think it's the right thing for your project. But it is very interesting to see, and we saw a graph last week that came out that was like $250 million has been lent out through the DAI credit system, which is pretty absurd for something that's relatively small. So we're excited. We have a lot of things to look forward to and are hopeful in a lot of ways. Coming up next, we've got securities tokens, non-fungible tokens, all kinds of real assets, commodities, et cetera, you name it, that can be, if it can become a token and can have some kind of price feed, then we can basically use it as collateral in our system. So it's going to be a whole brave new world of finance, and thank you guys all for being here.